I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. In America at large, in the 2010 census, white people made up 72% of the general population. Black people make up 13%, and Hispanics are 16%. But where I lived, right on the border of Mexico, Hispanics were over 90% of the population. And growing up, I never noticed that race mattered. In fact, the first time I can remember that the color of someone's skin actually mattered and made a difference was until the 6th grade. A friend of mine, Orlando Ibanez, started hanging out exclusively with other Hispanic kids, another social group. Until that moment, Orlando had been a part of a group of friends that were, some were white, some were brown, and nobody really cared. I remember asking Orlando why he wasn't hanging out with us anymore, and his response was really surprising. He said, "Oh, brown kids should hang out with brown kids." And I can remember thinking that was pretty dumb. It hurt my feelings too, that the color of my skin meant that we couldn't be friends anymore. It just seemed kind of dumb. And I remember thinking that brown kids should hang out with whoever they want to. What does skin color have to do with it? I didn't really notice anything again until high school graduation, when all my class started applying for scholarships and such. It seemed like every scholarship I could find, I would hit, each of those things. Oh yes, I qualify on this and this and this and this. And then was the last requirement. You had to be Hispanic. So I qualified academically, but my skin color was not the right color to receive that scholarship. Now, these are private scholarships I was looking at, and they have every right to do whatever they want to with that money. If you want to fund a scholarship that's only available to white kids with a Native American and Irish background whose names are Frank, you can do that. It's your money, you can do with it what you like. I didn't think it should matter, and it didn't feel fair at the time. The valedictorian from our class is named Amy McClure, and I remember she applied for Harvard, and a Harvard recruiter came to see her and interview her. And he told her, the interview went well, but I gotta tell you, Harvard only recruited Hispanic students from our county. So academically, Amy qualified for Harvard, but because she was white, Harvard wouldn't even look at her, because Harvard only accepted Hispanic students from the 3 counties that make up the Rio Grande Valley. Now, Amy ended up getting into Vanderbilt instead, so she turned out alright, but I remember being outraged on her behalf that she had 0 chance of getting into this school because of her skin color. All that work and effort that she had done was worth nothing to Harvard because she was white. It wasn't until college that race began to make a perceptible impact on everyday life. On my first day at Texas A&M, I went to the big, huge Sabisa dining hall, and I sat down at the black table. Everybody at the table was black except me, and I got some really funny looks. I mean, all conversation at the table just stopped, and they looked at me like I was a triple-headed alien that had just descended from Mars. Never before had I had any experience with something like a black table. It was a very foreign concept to me, but I learned quick, and I never sat there again. And it's not that I was in any sort of danger. These guys weren't going to do anything to me. They weren't cussing at me. They weren't throwing anything at me. It was just that uncomfortableness of knowing that you don't belong there and they don't want you there. And the rest of college was similar. Suddenly race mattered. Suddenly race was a thing. And it was way more of a thing for some people than for others, but it was still a thing. Race suddenly mattered. It made a difference. Now, while I was at A&M, I made several black friends that might not have been the obvious choice for friendship. See, I was deeply involved with Republican Party politics on the campus, and traditionally Republicans don't get along famously well with, say, the NAACP, but I ended up being friends with the head of the campus NAACP. Oddly enough, his name was David too. And David, this NAACP guy, he really opened my eyes to a few things that I had just been unaware of before. See, David was a pretty handsome guy, and he always, and I mean always, dressed really, really well. You never saw him in sweatpants and a t-shirt or casual blue jeans or anything like that. I mean, David was always in a suit and tie, and sometimes even a 3-piece suit. He looked sharp. One time I complimented David on how he dressed, and he told me something really interesting. He said, "I'm not dressing this way to impress you. I'm not even dressing this way because I like it. I dress this way to defend myself." You see, if I walk around town dressed like this, everybody waves and smiles and they're glad to see me. When I look like this, I'm welcome in anybody's home or store. But if I ever dress down, if I just wear a t-shirt and blue jeans, I'm not welcome anywhere. Nobody waves at me, nobody looks at me, and if I so much as walk by them while they're sitting in their car, I can hear them lock their doors. I dress this way, not so I can look good, but so that I can protect myself. You see, my friend David, he felt like I did when I sat down at the black table, only he felt it everywhere, every day, wherever he went. He felt it in every classroom he walked into on a campus where only 5% of the population was black. Growing up, I never thought there was a race problem in America because I didn't see it around me. The fact that I made it to 18 years old without realizing that race really was an issue is a prime example of something that we now call white privilege. So I went all this time without even noticing these racial issues. My friend David, though, born with darker skin than me, he experienced those problems, those realities every day of his life. And just because I hadn't noticed that there were problems doesn't mean they didn't exist. Like I said before, in the Rio Grande Valley where I grew up, white people were less than 10% of the population, but the church that I grew up in, lily white. The fact that I never noticed the incongruity, that's white privilege. The Mundys, Mania and Linda's family, you've never met such wonderful, Christian, clean-cut, hard-working, wonderful people. But I remember one of their aunts telling us about how they would occasionally get stopped by the cops and treated like they'd stolen that car. Well, they didn't steal it, that is their car. And that has never happened to me. That it doesn't happen to white people, but it does happen to black people, that they get pulled over and treated like a criminal as if they've stolen the car that they bought and paid for, is an American travesty. You see, white privilege isn't something that white folks inflict on other people. It's just a lack of understanding that a lot of white people have because they've never experienced these things and haven't had to deal with the petty lack of trust and stupid indignities that many non-whites have had to endure their whole lives. Now you, my darlings, may have to deal with some of this growing up. You are objectively beautiful both on the inside where it counts and on the outside where it grabs attention. But despite that, some people will treat you as less. Some people. Not all. Not nearly all. Not even close, but some will. And you'll notice them. Now, it is really dumb to think that the color of your skin means anything besides the color of your skin. It's as lunatic as believing that your eye color makes some sort of difference or the color of your hair matters. But as I've said many times, race matters precisely how much we think it does, not how much you or I might think it does. We live in a community, and if that community, or even a select few within it, think that race matters, you will feel it. Izzy's already told me about some little boy at school that picks on her because she looks different than he does. Now, it's just one kid, at least that you told me about, but that one kid makes the whole school feel like a threat. Changing to fit in won't work. They'll find something else to pick on you about. In my school, race wasn't much of an issue, so the kids just found other things to pick on people for. Sports, for instance, was a huge divide. The kids who were athletic and good at sports, they grouped up and they shunned the kids that weren't. You had football guys and cheerleaders over here, and you had the band kids and the nerds way over here. Some kids got picked on because they were rednecks, and some kids got picked on because they were good at math. I can assure you that if you take race out of the mix, people will just find some other stupid thing to make fun of someone for. One girl who I worked with at Cinemark said she was constantly teased at school because of her freckles. She said the teasing was so bad when she was a kid, she wanted to try and scrub the freckles off her skin with steel wool. Thankfully she didn't, and it wouldn't have worked anyways, but there you have it. Freckles. Straightening your hair will not work. They'll just pick on you for something else. That's what they do. If you want to straighten your hair, do it! But do it because you want to straighten your hair, not because somebody else wants you to straighten your hair. So how do you respond to someone who thinks that race matters? Ignoring it's not going to work, and changing yourself so you fit in, that's not going to work either. If anyone can give guidance on how to deal with being mistreated and abused, that person is Jesus Christ. He loved and forgave the very people who were in the act of murdering him while they were doing it. And he didn't even demand that they be sorry before he forgave them. They didn't have to earn forgiveness. He gave it to them willingly. But if anybody else could tell us how to deal with being abused, that'd be Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He not only led a movement that saved black Americans from systematic abuse and institutionalized disenfranchisement, but he saved much of white America too. Saved it from itself and the callous hatred of black Americans that was so pervasive they didn't even recognize it as the hatred it was. It was just part of the air that they breathed, so normal it could no longer even be seen. Love is a sword that heals, he said. Love is a weapon, and it will cut your enemies, and by cutting them in two, it will make them whole. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Love can be easy, like my love for you, but love can be the hardest thing in the world, too. I have seldom been able to forgive and love someone who is actively hurting me, knows it, and doesn't care. Now, Christ did it, and it's probably the biggest miracle in the Bible. Forget parting the Red Sea. Forget being raised from the dead. Forgiving someone who is presently hurting you and shows no remorse for doing it. That is God's biggest miracle. Hard as it can be, love is the only answer. And the only way to love the unlovable is through Christ. It's to realize how unlovable you are because you have fallen so very short of who we need to be to earn Christ's love. And yet he loves us anyways. who loves us so much that he lived the perfect life we couldn't and died the death we should have. If you can know that and accept Christ's love, then you'll realize that no matter how unlovable the people who hurt us are, the awful truth is you are no better. Sin is the great equalizer, and we are all sinners. And if Christ loves me, and he loves you, and he loves them too. In that love, in Christ's love of the unlovable me, I too can find love for the unlovable. As Erica Jong said, may all your troubles last only so long as your New Year's resolutions. But should this trouble find you, don't ignore it. Don't try to conform to it, and don't change because of it. Respond to the vile with grace and mercy. Love, Dad.